As a Christian, could you shoot someone who is endangering the lives of you and your family? I've asked that question of many Christians. The answer goes something like this. God said, "Thou shalt not kill." So no, I wouldn't shoot someone who is threatening me. God will protect me. But is God against your owning a weapon that will provide you with the ability to protect yourself if your life is in danger? That was the question my wife and I struggled with a few years ago. We had never considered that question before because Marlene's first husband was shot and killed by a man with a firearm, as was her half-brother in a separate situation. Our children, particularly the boys, grew up without toy guns, and we taught them not to point their index finger at someone and say, "Bang." And even though I served in Vietnam, was a marksman, and grew up with toy guns, I still accepted and supported Marlene's aversion to guns. But as our society changed with more violent crime and terrorist activity, I began to worry about how that violence would affect me if my wife, children, or grandchildren were hurt or killed at the hands of a thief, gangbanger, terrorist, or a mentally disturbed person, and if I was there, could I do nothing to protect them? Then the Boston bombing happened, and in my heart I felt the need to learn how to protect myself. One day I told Marlene, "I'm thinking about getting a carry permit for a handgun." Her response really blew me away. She said, "I think I'd like to look into that too." Our first question was, what does God say about it? Our second one was, could I or we pull the trigger if someone was going to hurt us, a family member or a bystander? The answer to the second question seemed to come easy to both of us. We both believed we could pull the trigger when lives were threatened. Considering the first question was much more difficult. We went online to see what pastors and lay people had written about the Bible and what it says about having and using a sword. I use the word sword because firearms didn't exist during Christ's lifetime, and the sword was the weapon of the day. We read them all and made our final decision based primarily on scripture of the betrayal of Jesus in the garden. Surprised? Here are some thoughts. In Matthew 26:51 and 52, Judas was in the garden and he betrays Jesus with a kiss. As the guards were taking Jesus into custody, one of the disciples drew his sword and cut off the guard's ear. Jesus said, "Put your sword back in its place, for all those who take up the sword shall perish by the sword." Our first reaction was, okay, we shouldn't use a weapon. But why was the disciple carrying a weapon in the first place? Did Jesus know he was carrying a sword? And if yes, then why stop him from using it? In the Gospel of Luke 22, it was the Passover meal, and a lot happened. Jesus said he would be betrayed. He gave the disciples communion. The disciples squabbled over who was the greatest among them. He told Peter he would deny him, and then in verse 36 through 38, we read, "But now," he said, "take your money and your traveler's bag, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. For the time has come for the prophecy about me to be fulfilled. He was counted among the rebels. Everything written about me by the prophets will come true." "Look, Lord," they replied, "we have 2 swords among us." "That's enough," he said. Consider this, the disciples were carrying weapons at Passover, one of Israel's most important celebrations, and Jesus knew about it. Did they always carry weapons? Were they armed in the synagogue or during times of prayer, or while Jesus ministered to the thousands? We felt that if the disciples would carry a weapon on one of the most holy days, and Jesus was aware of it, they would be armed on all other occasions as well. We read a large number of Bible verses and blogs that had us leaning towards pro-weapon, but these 2 chapters in Matthew and Luke pretty much sealed the deal for us. We decided to prepare ourselves for using weapons to protect ourselves when threatened. Does that mean we recommend that you do the same thing? It does not. You should make a decision based on how you interpret Scripture and determine whether carrying a firearm is right for you, the family, and those around you. To help you, I'm posting a number of articles, blogs, and blogs below to get you started. The decision you make is a personal one. If you're in prayer and open to God's Spirit leading you, you'll arrive at your right answer. Until we connect again, God bless you and keep you safe.